Welcome to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors. Dr. Allen chats with successful investors exploring their journey from setback to triumph. Through this window, we glimpse the truths that inspire our guests to invest abundantly and flourish in all areas of life. And now your host, Dr. Allen.
Hello, welcome to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors, where we delve deep into the lives of our successful guests to find inspiration for our own growth and development. I'm your host, Dr. Allen. Today's guest began his real estate career in 2005 as district manager for a fully integrated real estate company specializing in self-storage. He quickly rose through the ranks to become one of 3 regional vice presidents, where he was responsible for over 120 properties and 200 employees. For 3 years running, his team held the record for the best performing region in the company's portfolio. He left his VP position to form his own firm, Pinnacle Storage Properties and Storage Managers. I am pleased to have with me today John Maines. Welcome, John. I'm so pleased to have you with us today.
Thank you, Alan. Glad to be here, buddy.
Let's start off with you just sharing with us a little bit about your formative years and what were some of the most memorable times from your formative years.
That's an interesting question. So I grew up in the Philadelphia market. I grew up in a divorced family, like a lot of kids do. Mm-hmm. My dad lived north of Philly. My mom lived in South Jersey. So for most of those years, I was I didn't have a good knack for authority. So I bounced back and forth from my mom to my dad. So I actually went to multiple schools through high school. Mm-hmm. In my senior year, I went to 3 different high schools just to graduate high school.
Oh, wow. And 1 year, huh? That was
1985. I went to Woodbury High School. I went to Deptford High School, both in New Jersey. And then I graduated from Palisades High School up near Quakertown, Pennsylvania, north of Philly. Mm-hmm. So I went from living with my mom to living with my aunt to then living with my dad, and all because I had a hard time listening to authority. So I was very driven then, but and my energy was driven in a way that was different than most kids, and like I love to learn. But I hated school, if that made any sense. And I love to learn the things that I wanted to learn.
You wanted to learn, yeah.
That I was forced to learn. So,
that I think that happens with a lot of bright kids. I still teach school, and I see a lot of very, very bright kids that could be doing extraordinarily well academically, but they don't. For whatever reasons, from the choices that they're making there.
Well, to give you an idea, I went from Woodbury to Deptford and then to Palisades because I was working 50, 60 hours a week and
oh my gosh, wow,
required to go to high school. And I was having a hard time getting up for school, so I was missing a lot of school. Well, when I went into Palisades High School, it was January 5th of 85. I remember the day specifically. The counselor said, if you pass every class from here to the end of the year, you can graduate. And I was typically a C student. And the reason that I was is for lack of focus, not because I was dumb. And the counselor said, if you pass every class from here to the end of the school year, you can walk in June. So I had a light bulb go off in my head to say, man, I don't want to be stuck here. So I started
another year of this, huh?
Yeah. So I started to apply myself, and I got straight A's from January to June.
Wow.
I wanted to get the hell out of high school. I was like, I am done. I got to get out of here. Yeah. So when I apply myself to what I want, I know I can take over the world if I want to. And that's what it is. I left there, didn't have any money. So didn't have any money to go to college. I was really good at art, so I did apply to the Art Institute of Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
Then they wanted $17,000 a year for an art degree.
Wow. Yeah. Wow.
And I didn't have that kind of money, so I skipped doing that. But and I'll tie all this together because through art, through sports, things like that, that is truly what's made me the business person that I am today. Very creative, thinking outside the box through those art type of things. Like, I'll give you an example. In high school that year, I was so bored in high school that my algebra teacher told me to study the next chapter, and he let me teach the class for a week because he recognized I was bored.
Uh-huh.
And like, algebra to me is just, it's fascinating.
Uh-huh.
The components to that work. Well, if you fast forward to now, that's truly what real estate is, how you syndicate deals and do deal structure and fees and how the financing works, and all that is really just algebra. I mean, so going back to my teenage years and into my early adult life, I went into retail, and because I needed a job and I needed to pay my rent and all that kind of stuff, and did really well in retail, but after 17 years got burned out and ended up in self-storage. I ended up self-storage with Uncle Bob's Self-Storage. They're the fourth largest self-storage company in the United States. They're branded as Life Storage now. They changed their brand. From there, went on board to the Jenkins Organization as a CEO, and here I am, the COO of the Jenkins Organization. Here I am, the CEO of Pinnacle. And it all drives from the way I grew up. My stepfather was very driven.
Mm-hmm.
And he instilled in us a work ethic. He passed away in 2011. And literally on his deathbed, I don't know if you're familiar with how the human body works, but when people are on hospice, they try, right at the very end, they try to get up and go someplace, or they talk about going somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I was on watch duty for my stepfather in the middle of the night. We were taking shifts, and he tried to get up out of bed. And I got my brother, who's in the medical industry, into the room, and we started talking to him, and he said that he was going to work.
Wow.
He was on his deathbed, and he was going to work. We said, "You're going to work?" And he said, "I got a job to do."
Yeah.
So, not to get upset, but that's been my motto now. I've got a job to do.
Yeah.
And it comes from that.
Yeah.
It comes from that drive, that work ethic, that I don't know if you can see this, your listeners or viewers, but he's standing right here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Over my shoulder going, "You got a job to do." So here I am. I got a job to do.
And I think, that's important. And of course, one of the things we talk about on this show is, what is your highest purpose, and where is it that you actually find the meaning in your life? And from what you're sharing here, it certainly sounds to me like it was your stepdad who gave you that sense of meaning and purpose. And from what I'm hearing, that meaning and purpose to you is actually there's a job to do.
There's numerous things there. As he taught, I can remember when we were kids, we went by his last name up through middle school. He never officially adopted us, but and then in middle school through high school, because he didn't legally adopt us, we had to go by my given.
Your dad's name, yeah.
So my little brother, when he went into kindergarten, we went by Zelag, was Roger's last name. And when he went into kindergarten, he got 100% on his kindergarten test.
Oh, wow.
And the teacher said to him, "You know what that means? That means you didn't get anything wrong."
Uh-huh.
Motto in the household was, "Well, that's because Zelags don't make mistakes."
Oh, wow.
And James said to the teacher at 5 years old, "Well, of course, because Zelags don't make mistakes." And that impression of that, not only as a kid, but through your adult life. Obviously, I make tons of mistakes now.
Well,
but
who doesn't? Yeah. I mean,
but that standard was set for us kids.
a high standard. Yeah.
It's not just I have a job to do. I have a job to do, and I got to get it right.
Right.
So like when it comes to investments now, we've had investments go sideways. And the reason I say sideways and not have failed is because we got to get it right. We don't have a choice. And, we might have, in the one case that I'm thinking of, we got into a lawsuit with the general contractor who took 8 months too long to finish the project and all that kind of stuff. And in the end, it affected all the finances along.
Sure, yeah.
Right. You lack cash flow, all that kind of stuff. Well,
Certainly.
what do? Do you sit around and sit on your hands? No. We went back to the bank and renegotiated the loan. We're in the process of refinancing that loan now through not only using the PPP money, but also refinancing it out. And in the end, come June of this year, that project's going to be extremely successful. So those mentalities that were instilled in me as a kid, not just I have a job to do, but getting it right and all of that my stepfather was my football coach. I played for 9 years. He would not let me not get the play right. I mean, you had to play right. And I can remember him, I was quarterback. So he was like, you got to hold your hands this way. You got to do this. You got to do that. And so all of that rings true to today, to where you're asking what my purpose is now my purpose has become much different than what I would have said years ago. My purpose years ago was to try to gain some type of success. And since I've already done that, my purpose has since changed. And my purpose now is to teach other people how to become successful. And give them that same drive and determination and influence them in a positive way through all of those things that deep down inside. Something you said when you mentioned him and that the purpose was that I've got a job to do is Roger was my biggest advocate, but he was also my biggest critic, and he was my biggest nemesis, all in the same person. So from that standpoint, in my life now, I have to have a nemesis. I have to have somebody or some image of somebody that I'm fighting against. That drives me, right? So whether that's, corporate America, or whether that's my ex-boss that fired me, or whether that, whatever that is, that's the nemesis for me. But then on the other side, the drive and determination and the positive that came from Roger is fueling, helping people, getting my team to grow. Like I got one of my team that we allow our team to do deals if they want to, and we'll help them through the process. One guy on my team now that's 24 years old, getting ready to buy his first RV park.
Oh, wow.
He's 24. To me, I'm excited about that.
Sure, right.
Most people would fire him for that. That's how I got fired from my last company.
Is that right? Yeah.
I put a deal under contract, and my boss flipped his lid.
Well,
so
yeah.
So I don't want to be that culture. I don't want to be that leader. I want to be the leader that influences people to be successful. And through their success, I'm going to be successful. He came to us yesterday and said, look, I know you guys don't have any bearing on my RV park, but I want to give you guys 6% ownership of my RV park. What? He said, that's for teaching me everything that you've taught me over the last 2 years.
Wow.
And
that's a good teacher to already at 24, not only being able to do that on his own, but to realize that he can give back, and it's not just a selfish matter. But I think
it's funny because during that conversation, what I said to him is, I said, well, here's what I want you to do. I said, I'm not trying to negotiate what percentage you give us or anything, but I would like you to consider giving our regional vice president of operations, who's an hourly employee, salary employee, but VP of Finance and our bookkeeper, I would like you to consider giving them a percentage of your business because they're also going to help you. So I don't know if that comes out of our 6 or if you add a percentage on top of that 6 for them, but it doesn't matter to me. But if you're going to go to them for advice or help, or they're going to do your books or what have you, I want you to incentivize them as well. So this is what I got out of growing up, is not being competitive, but being compassionate towards people and giving back. You know, next door neighbor as a kid, she had a stroke at 42 years old. My parents would tell me, go next door to the Bainey's house and offer to mow their lawn. Go next door and offer to pull the weeds out of their garden. I can remember sitting in the dirt pulling weeds for hours and absolutely hating it.
Right.
But it's the right thing to do. She couldn't get out and do it.
Right.
And I did it for free. And all of those lessons, those life lessons growing up as a kid, has transpired into who we are as a culture today. And when he offered us ownership, I was like, no, let's give it to the team. Let's give the team some ownership. So here I am.
Well, I think, in your stepdad saying, I've got a job to do, and then that becoming a real driving force in your life, as you've explained here, there's much more to it. I mean, I have a job to do may sound like, well, I'm just going out to work, but I think to your stepdad, and certainly to the message that he has given you, is that the job to do is not going out to work, but the job to do is actually going out there to make this world a better place. And that's what the job is. It's not going in and punching the clock. It's leaving this world a better place than what you found it there.
It's also having an attitude to get it right,
Yeah.
And for my investors, I have over 120 investors, and I think the reason they invest in us is because of that culture. They look at us and say, all right, there's a drive, there's a determination, call it a chip on my shoulder, but to me, it's a positive chip. It's not, the LL Cool J said years ago that the difference between confidence and cockiness is action. And you can walk around and be as cocky as you want, but you got to follow it up, right? So I've been blamed both of being confident and being cocky. But what we try to do is we try to back that up with the action. And when things are going good, we drive to make them better. If things are going badly, we drive them, make them good. I mean, it's all action oriented. We're a big action oriented culture. And we talk about it all the time internally that, it's one thing to say you're going to do something, but show everybody that you're going to go do it. And that's really what I got from my stepfather. Is he was a workaholic. He drove truck for a living, but then he would get on his Kubota and he would drive, he would mow the Harley Davidson lots. He would mow all these different pieces of land, and he seemed like he was never home, but he was always working.
Always going, huh?
That's our culture. I mean, I've been on the phone last night at 8:30, this morning at 7 o'clock. I mean, it doesn't matter. It's, we got a job to do.
Well, thinking back on your life here, how are you different now than, say, you were 10 years ago, both psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually? And
not physically, because I had a gorgeous head of hair when I was a kid, and I ain't got that anymore. And I was ripped because I played football, and now I'm fat. So not physically. Okay, psychologically.
Psychologically, emotionally, and spiritually, how have you changed over the last 10 years?
That's a great question. Probably. So I've learned a lot. My business partner, Robbie Dunn, and I both have gone through all kinds of counseling, self-inflicted counseling, where, we volunteer for it because we want to be better people. So
right.
through the years, I've had to identify with myself, but my business partner, Robbie Dunn, has also helped me in the last 4 years identify some of the traits inside me, and what gets me passionate, what fires me up, all those kind of things. And some things that I didn't realize just 4 years ago. One of them is that respect is a big deal for me. And so for me, I strive for getting respect out of people. And to me, that's a basic and standard in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
But when someone disrespects me, it really fires me up, particularly in the form of like lying to me, and you deal with this a lot in the syndication side of things, where brokers will tell you what you want to hear for a long period of time and up money, and they lead you down a path that they're going to do the loan and blah, 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 blah. And at the last minute, they change all the terms of the loan because they know they got you. You got to get them, and so on. What I've learned about myself is how to have patience through that process, how to understand that my trigger point of disrespect. So we put things in motion to source two different loans at the same time. And if I break up with you because you didn't produce, then shame on you, right? So, I mean, you're going to do it to me. So
we're going to do it to you.
We tell them that, so that they know they have to produce, and what you're going to put on a term sheet or an LOI or something, that's what you got to do, because I got two of them and I'm going to chase both of them at the same time. So for me, like psychologically, like I'm 52 now. When I was 36, I went through a psychological reset in my own brain. So for the last 15, 16 years or whatever that maths out to be, I've spent more time trying to understand me, to know what drives me, things like that. Interesting enough, obviously in this segment, I've talked a lot about my stepfather, which I've not done in most podcasts, which is kind of cool. But I told you Roger was my biggest driving force, encouraging through pushing me. He was my biggest critic and he was my biggest nemesis. But after Roger passed away in 2011, there was this big glass ceiling taken off of me psychologically. That I was able to now be the dominant one in the family without him being the dominant one over top of me.
That's interesting, yeah.
You've heard it called the law of the lid. You've heard it called the glass ceiling, all of those kind of things. It's psychologically, it's a very similar thing. And interesting enough, I'm one of three boys, the middle of three boys. So going back to when I was a teenager, that's probably why I was most rebellious, is trying to keep up with my other two siblings. But both of my brothers have also become very successful since then at the same time. So what I've learned over the last year is how to become at peace with me and pick the things that I enjoy, but then understand on the other side what my trigger points are so that they're not triggered as hard. And through that time, I think that's really what has excelled me and given me the confidence to do what I'm doing. So just to tell your listeners a little bit of something is I got fired from my last two corporate jobs. So I like to say I'm unemployable. But I got fired.
Good thing.
It ended up being a good thing. And the reason I got fired is because I always wanted more. I would master this role at the same time as look at the next role and try to master that. Well, when you work for an independent operator that buys properties on their own and things like that, that is the COO, that's what I was doing. The next level is to be an owner. I mean, there's nothing after that. as far as when you're second in charge of the whole company, the next step's to be first in charge, right? And that kind of intimidates people at times. So I ended up getting fired from those 2 different jobs. And after I got fired from the second job because of putting that deal under contract, I called my brother the next day, my brother Joe, who is on my board of directors. He doesn't know it, but he's on my board. And I called him and I said, hey, I got fired yesterday. And he said what most brothers would say, right? Most brothers would be like, dude, that sucks. I'm sorry to hear that, blah, 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 blah. That's not what Joe said. Joe said, congratulations. I said, what? He said, congratulations. This is the biggest opportunity of your life. You've got everything lined up to do what you've always wanted to do. What's stopping you? And I went, that's a good question. What is stopping me? He said, nothing. And for 24 hours, I sulked, and that was it. And it was game on. I got a job to do. Boom. 4 years later, $100 million in self-storage as a company.
Wonderful.
We've raised over $30 million in private equity. And it just exploded because I called it a grass fire at the time. I went to the conference. I got fired in October. I went to the conference in January in Dallas for the Self-Storage Association. And people were like, so what's going on? I go, well, I don't work for the Jenkins Organization anymore, right? And they're like, no, what? I'm going to buy my own stuff. I want to be a part of that. I went to a 3-day conference with 2 meetings on my schedule. And by the time those 3 days were done, I had 8 meetings a day for 3 days. And the graph took off. And here we are 4 years later, all because my brother Joe kicked me and said, go on. It's time to go. And here we are.
Well, you've mentioned you've mentioned a whole lot of things I would love to go deeper into, but we unfortunately are out of time. So I hope we can get back together here in just really the next few days or a few weeks here, and do a follow-up here. I do have one last question, but before I get to that, can you tell our listeners how they can get in touch with you? Absolutely.
My email is john@johnmanes.com, and that's MANES. PinnacleStorageProperties.com, and then 210-818-1496. And I always end my videos with "Come join the fun," because it's a blast.
Well, we'll have all of that information in the show notes as well here. My last question, though, is when you come to the end of your life, what do you want to have on your epitaph?
I don't know that I'm allowed to say that on this show.
It's an adult show. Yeah.
Good. I'm going to put, for all you doubters, you can kiss my ass.
I love that. I love that. Great epitaph there.
There comes out the rebel from when I was a teenager.
Great epitaph. Enjoy being with you today, John, and I do
Thanks,
look
Alan. It was my pleasure.
Another conversation in the near future here.
I would love that. Thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in to Creekside Chats with successful multifamily real estate investors, brought to you by Steed Talker Capital. Steed Talker Capital works with both new and established investors nationwide, creating opportunities to flourish in all areas of life. As part of our efforts to make the world a better place, Steed Talker Capital contributes to activities and organizations committed to better understand the equine. These endeavors attempt to enhance the human treatment of horses worldwide. Steed Talker Capital, working for a world where all creatures great and small flourish abundantly. For resources to enhance your well-being through multifamily real estate investment, connect with us online at capital.steedtalker.com.